age ago, the beating heart of our people was a king who knew only victory. He wanted nothing more than an honorable death on the battlefield. Yet, none could match him, and so he wandered the earth, becoming lost in time and tide. Then we too lost our honest purpose, while silk-clad men sat upon the throne. But tremble now, all cities that lay under the stars, for out of the shadows and mists of the land of promise, our courage has been rekindled, our heart has returned, and the world will burn.
All right, how's everybody doing tonight? Somebody give me a shout out in the comments and welcome everybody to Making Comics Fun Again. The 1 week I schedule for a 9:45 opening, and John, when we had our comic book team up, just took off at 9:30. The 1 week I could have started at 9:30. I scheduled for 9:45. But anyway, I'll get it right eventually. Let's see. Michael says you can hear me. Great. So this week, I figure we'd just do some plain old fun. What I wanted to do was to talk about some great comic runs that I don't think get enough attention. And they can be small, they can be large. And I want everybody in the comments to talk about their great comic runs that they love. And I'll see if I can pull some of them up in the background. I'm just using, what's the name of the site? Cover Browser, and I'm going to pull up some pictures from Cover Browser and show you some of what I think is some great runs in comics. Obviously, since I am, the person who believes that the 80s was the greatest era for comic books, we're probably going to go back to the 80s for most of my great runs. But as I said, put in the comments what you think of as a great run, and I'll see if I can A, remember it, or B, pull it up in the background. We'll see what we can do. Anyways, everybody is just going to have to bear with me today because I'm working off of multiple screens. And, if you've been around my channel, that I'm, Amish levels of technologically impaired, but I'll try my best, and let's just have some fun talking about great comic runs. So I'm not going to do my normal spiel. Usually I do about, 20 minutes of talking on a subject, but I'm just going to talk, I think, about great comic runs that I love for about 20 minutes, and we'll see if we can keep up with the chat as well at the same time. So that being said, anybody who is new here, if you have any questions, you want to make any comments, and tag me in it, and I will get to the chat after my little bit of a spiel and answer any questions. If you could just put a question mark at the end or tag me, say, hey, RJ, and I'll see if I can answer any and all questions before we leave tonight. And besides that, there are 2 links in the description for my 3 graphic novels, in case you're wondering. Thomas Valiant and the Valiant Heroes can both be purchased at the Valiant Heroes Indiegogo site, which is still in demand, and Crown the Destroyer, which is still open. We are you can also get Thomas Valiant there as well if you order Crown the Destroyer. We're still working on Crown the Destroyer. We are fulfilling the Valiant Heroes right now, just in case anybody wants to know about that. So let's take a real quick look at the chat before I get to my great comic runs. Greg is here early as usual. How you doing, Greg? Michael is here. Let's see. Oh, good heavens, I forgot my glasses, but I'll do my best to move the screen away from me so I can see better. Vaz is here. Melted Butter, how you doing? Love the intro. Thank you very much. I worked very hard on that. Thank you, Michael. Let's see. The other Michael is here. Let's see. Calliope is here. How you doing, everybody? Great to see everybody. Greg is here. Da, 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 da. Let's see. Here's somebody. Let's see. The Lugi, the Lugi AO6. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that, but very interesting tagline, and I love your avatar. Saying, what's up, RJ? Not a whole lot. We just want to talk comics tonight. So let's see who else is here before I get onto my Pedro is here and Calliope. Yes, Calliope is here. So let me go to share screen and I will show you some of what I have tagged up in the background for great comic runs. Here we go. Let's go with this one right here. All right. Now, unfortunately, when I'm navigating these screens, I can't see the chat, but hopefully I'll get to all of your questions as soon as I can. But we'll start with one of the greatest comic runs, what I think. Personally, I've said this many times, so I have to start here, of course. I personally think the greatest run in comic books ever was Walter Simonson's run on Thor. So we are starting with Walter Simonson's run on Thor right here. This is the first Beta Ray Bill and Walter Simonson, and you can see Beta Ray smashing the old Thor title, and it is instituted as new in the next issue here. And quite honestly, I do have all of these. I am, I think, missing one or two of the Simonson run, which I will fill that up as soon as I am possible, as soon as I am able. But I love Walter Simonson. And I think Louise Simonson also did some of the writing in here as well, if I remember correctly. I'm just going off of memory. So let's take a look at some of these absolutely beautiful covers as we scroll down to talk about Simonson's run on Thor. It is very, very much steeped in Simonson's understanding of Norse mythology mixed with Marvel Comics. And that's what you get with Walter Simonson's Thor. And again, this is a very long run that Walter Simonson had on the Mighty Thor. Again, I believe we're going to have to switch screens here. Just one second. We'll hit the next screen. I believe, as I said, that Walter Simonson's story, it culminates in the greatest book ever written for comics, which is one of the last stories that he did for this run. To me, it was the most exciting book ever, and I don't even know if they show it because they don't have every comic cover here in the comic cover organizer that I'm using, but let's see. Scroll down. It is the Destroyer issue of Walter Simonson's Thor. If I do remember correctly, the cover that is done by Walter Simonson, but the internal art was done by, who was it? If I remember correctly, it was Sal Buscema, I think, who did the internals for that. Now, let me just talk about a couple of these covers here. This is where you're getting really deep into the Walter Simonson's run of Thor. This here, the one with Angel in the background, and X Factor. That's Fall of the Mutants right there. So it's a tie-in with Fall of the Mutants. Extremely good run. And by the way, this is also the time about, you'll see Thor again with the beard here. The reason for that is part of the Walter Simonson run is that Thor was under a curse at this time, and that curse actually made his bones brittle as an old woman's. But of course, Marvel had to explain that as being an old Asgardian woman, so that's much stronger than a normal human being. But his face got wrecked in a fight, and he grew the beard in order to hide the scars that he had on his face. And then after that, he had to actually put on this armor, which here is partly some of the mythological armor that you find in the Thor myth, and he puts it on again because his body is just failing him and he needs to fight even more. Now, here's one of the best covers in comics that I've ever. Here we have the Destroyer, which again, on your right, you have the Destroyer issue of the Walter Simonson Thor run, and really I see that as the apex of the Walter Simonson Thor run. It is, in my opinion, the most exciting book I have ever read in my life. quite honestly. And it is the culmination of all of the Walter Simonson run. However, that being said, the issue next to it on your left is the issue with the Midgard serpent. Actually, it starts off as Fing Fang Foom. We got Fing Fang Foom here, but Fing Fang Foom is actually just a husk for the Midgard serpent. And that issue, what number is it? Let me scroll in just a little bit. 380. Number 380 for the Mighty Thor. It is a spectacular book for art. If you want to see the beauty of Walter Simonson art, go to that issue of the Mighty Thor. Even the cover itself. I remember redrawing this cover. I hung it up. I didn't want to hang up the issue itself on my wall, so I redrew the cover as best I could, and I put that up on my wall. It is spectacular. You got splash pages all over the place within that issue because the Midgard serpent basically goes all the way around the earth. So Walter Simonson tried to portray the huge quality of that character, and he does it in a spectacular way. Again, these two issues right here. This is prime comic reading for anybody. If you want my recommendations about, go pick up some good comics or an omnibus, I suppose I would much rather have the floppies, but yeah, Walter Simonson's Thor right there. It is a beautiful, beautiful book. Let me see. I should have this in a little bit. Let's see. See if I can make it full screen layout. Here we go. That was a little better, and I'll take that off the screen, and let's see here. Actually, I'm going to reduce this, and we're going to move on from Walter Simonson's Thor. Unfortunately, it is unfortunate to say the least, because it is the beautiful, beautiful run. Let's go on to another great run, though. We'll stop this screen and add a new one here. Let's see. I got a couple open here, and this will probably be of no surprise to anyone when I pull up. Surprise. No, let me see. Let's see. Here it is. I got it here. All right. We got Conan. Conan the Barbarian. This, again, I have so many Conan the Barbarian. Marvel's Conan the Barbarian. I think that it is unique among Conan stories, because the way I read the Conan stories is that it's a giant, long expedition of Conan, and you get these separate interludes for every issue, but he's slowly moving in one direction, and then it culminates in a story where something happens. But one of the ones that sticks out in my mind, even though I love the early issues of Thor, or sorry, no, the early issues of Conan, where you got these just iconic covers and iconic stories, all of them they are. But for my money, when you get down to this run right here, which is at the bottom of this page, it is the Soul Eater run. Now, this ties in with some stories that you can find in Savage Sword of Conan as well. Soul Eater is a character, I think, that was introduced within some of the stories within Savage Sword of Conan, if I remember correctly, again, just working off of memory. But the Soul Eater is a very unique character. You'll see him in the background here. He's in both of these covers. And to me, this is one of the greatest runs, even though it is a very small run, of this character within Conan the Barbarian. And to me, again, one of the better, not the best, one of the better story arcs within Conan the Barbarian. Even though it's, again, we're just talking about great runs of story right now. Sometimes great runs of story, sometimes great runs of artists. But look, here's where we get into what I think is one of the best. I apologize for the ads on the side. One of the best, if not the best, Marvel Conan the Barbarian story. It is the Haiku trilogy. Here is book 1 on your right, and I'm going to get away from that. And they don't have book 2 and 3 here, but unfortunately, as I said, they don't have every cover listed. But this character here, right here, this run here, it is obviously a trilogy. So it's a 3-issue run of this character with this artist, and it is Conan basically fighting samurai. And it is the best, for my money, the best Marvel Conan short run that you can find within those books. Again, you get some spectacular covers. later on when they're trying to sell more Conan before it actually went the way of the dodo. But again, for story, yeah, the Haiku trilogy, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, let me hope I am. To me, that is prime Marvel Conan. If you want to, and you have never read those before, again, they're only 3 issues. You could go pick them up at your comic store, probably for a couple of dollars. Conan are not very expensive, but to me, again, prime Conan, especially for Marvel. Let's see. Okay, let's end this screen and I'll bring up something else. Let's bring up something completely different here. All right, all right. I just have to share a screen. Give me 1 second here to do my thing. Let's take a hop and jump over to DC just for a minute. Most of my great runs that I'm going to talk about tonight are Marvel, and I can't get through them all. I'm just going through a couple that came to the top of my mind right off the bat before we started today. But this run on Flash, which starts with Flash #1, again for DC, this was my book. This was a recreation of the character in a new format. This is Wally West, the Flash, not Wally West, Kid Flash. It is the very first time you get Wally West, the Flash, because this is right after Crises on Infinite Earths, where Barry Allen dies. And for my money, Barry Allen should have stayed dead, because for me, Wally West is the Flash because of this series. And I bought this from issue #1 off the spinner rack. This is a great introduction to Wally West as Flash. He was a completely different character in how he worked as an individual, not as a superhero so much, although his superhero powers did differ from Barry Allen's in some very distinct ways, which they get into in the storyline here. One of them being that he couldn't go as fast as Barry Allen. He couldn't go anywhere near the speed of light, which Barry Allen could. He couldn't even vibrate through things. He would try to vibrate through things, and he could manage to vibrate through them if he basically broke them down. But he couldn't vibrate through a wall and have it still standing at the end. Things like that. And Wally West, within these story arcs, also has to constantly eat massive amounts of food in order to feed his metabolism, in order for him to be the Flash. So again, these books, the very first issues of the new Flash, the Wally West Flash, as it came out, those were, again, this is a great run of comics and a great run of storytelling. I think Mike Barron actually does most of these issues because let's see, this is where they started to list your creators on the cover. Yeah, I think it's Mike that did every one of these. I've talked to Mike now a number of times on my channel and John Longsbach channel, and I love Mike. He has some great words, and for me, for my money, this is his greatest work, because this is what impacted me most. Because I don't know if anyone either understands, who wasn't there at the time, or remembers, but at the time when Flash got reset to #1, you had never seen, at least me, as a comic reader at that time, and I was an avid comic reader at the time, this was the first #1 that I can really remember. That wasn't, a mini series like Wolverine was, or even the maxi series of 12 issues. Sometimes you would get things like that from Marvel. You get Hawkeye, which is a mini series, all these kinds of things. But this was a restarting of the entire line of a iconic character from issue 1. And I had never seen anything like that before in my comic reading existence, not from Marvel and DC. And so when this happened, I bought not only from issue 1, but for me, this was a defining moment within comic history, because this legacy character was switched out for a new character, which, again, I'll have to reiterate, Wally West should still be the Flash. To bring back Barry Allen was a massive mistake, and I think the only reason they did it was because of trying to, put Barry Allen back into the television series. Maybe. I don't know. For sure, I don't know. But that's my take on the entire thing. This is, again, for me, Mike Barron's magnum opus right there. All right, let's do at least one more because I've been talking for a while here. How long have I been talking? Oh, at least 20 minutes. Okay, we'll do one more. And I want to make this a regular thing. We'll do it every couple of weeks. Anyways, talking about great runs if you guys like this. But let's see. I will take this screen down and, well, I want to talk about one more, but I'll squeeze two in. Let's see, in a roundabout way. Let me see. I got one more screen ready to go here. All right. Now, again, with the Walter Simonson, let's go to X Factor. Walter Simonson's run on X Factor. I think it started with issue number 8, as far as I remember. But his run on X Factor was iconic. As iconic as his run on Thor. For Thor fans, this is one of the defining moments for these old X-Men characters, was Walter Simonson's recreation of this book, because when he came onto the book, it was not doing well. And by the time he was done with it, it was a staple within Marvel Comics. It still didn't do as well after he left. But, I mean, I don't know. If you are a comic fan at all, how have you not seen this cover of X Factor number 13 with Jean Grey and Madeline Pryor in the background and the Phoenix in the front? This, again, this is premium Walter Simonson art. And these stories as well, I can't remember. I think it was his wife, Wheezy, who was writing the X Factor for sure here when he was drawing it. So again, this is one of the great runs within Marvel history, if you ask me. However, that all being said, again, culminating with Fall of the Mutants here, again, the creation of Archangel, visually created by Walter Simonson. And we have, of course, Apocalypse and the whole, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but X Factor used to have a talking ship, which was their base. And anyways, but scrolling down, and we'll get into a little bit of other X Factor runs. But I want to, there's Inferno. I loved Inferno. That was one of the, let me tell, okay, I'm gonna go off on a sidetrack here. I think I've told this story before, but Inferno, it happened, it was a summer event, and I don't know where you were during that summer. Let's see if I can see. I got to pull in here, see if I can remember what year it was. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyways, that was one wicked hot summer. It was wicked hot. And the thing was that I remember that the reason I got into Inferno was because I was stuck outside on this wicked hot day. And we were going, we had to, me and my brothers basically dropped my father off at a place. We had to get on a ferry and go across to an island. And we had to wait for him in the ferry terminal. And we had this black car. Oh, what the heck was it? It was a black T-Bird. So since it was a T-Bird and it was black, it was, and this was a wicked hot day. The sun was beating down on this car and just absorbing every last single ounce of heat. And because it was a T-Bird, there was no roof to the bloody thing. So it was just, windows. So we took the windows off the roof and thought that would make us a little bit cooler, but it did not in this black car, which we're waiting on all day. So I went into the one place where I could get air conditioning for like a couple minutes before they kick you out. And that was the gift shop that was down around there. It was the only thing anywhere even close to where we were. And I saw it was Ann Nesenti's run on Daredevil, part of Inferno. And I picked that up. And that was the very first time that I started to buy Daredevil issue after issue after issue. I had picked up several issues before that, and my brother had bought the entire Frank Miller run, which he had and I read, but it wasn't my book until that Ann Nesenti run with Daredevil on Inferno. I love Inferno. I remember that story because it was a hot summer, and Inferno was indeed what that was part of what the whole book was about. It happened in New York, and it was basically hell on earth. But anyways, let's scroll down to where I am going to talk about. Let's see if they have these covers here. Let's see. Scrolling down through these X Factor covers because I want to get to another great run within X Factor. We got to go down a little bit here. Here we go. Larry Stroman's X Factor. Again, one of the great runs, not only for X Factor, but for Marvel, if you ask me. This again, once again, as Walter Simonson himself had done already. This was a recreation of X Factor itself. As you see, all new, all different X Factor. And you have it was led by Havoc. You have Polaris there, Wolfsbane, Madrox, the Multiple Man, and I can't remember what the heck is his name. Guido? I can't remember his name for the life of me. Basically, Strongman was his name was Strongman, I think. Anyways, again, Stroman is a unique artist, to say the least. He came off of Alien Legion before this, if I remember correctly. Alien Legion Volume 2, which they basically tried to revamp the entire line of Alien Legion. Anyways, with Stroman doing the art, and I love that. Picked that up from issue number 1, and when he moved over to X Factor, again, this became my book. This was one of the best runs on any X book, if you ask me. Outside, certainly one of the best outside of X-Men, if you want to put it that way. But again, Stroman's art is spectacular. It is unusual, and it gives each of these characters such a unique feel that, again, here was some of these books and some of these characters that I was, again, never a great artist in my own right, to say the least, but I would always try to recreate some of the characters as he drew them. They were beautiful, beautiful characters and well drawn, well thought out stories. And you got to see these characters, which were always in the background of X-Men books like Polaris, like Havoc, come into their own and just, I don't know, expand the Marvel universe, the X-Men part of the Marvel universe, in a unique way. So again, I've been talking for almost 30 minutes now, and there is my spiel about great runs for today. Again, I would love to do this every month, maybe if I can, talk about great runs of, well, usually Marvel and DC, but not always. But let's see if I can get to the chat here and see what everybody else is talking about, and whether or not anybody else has some great runs I want to talk about. Let's see. Scrolling down. I gave a shout out to everybody. Apologize again. Forgot my glasses way in another room, which is, like 5 minutes away if I go down the stairs. So I will not be going to get them. I apologize if I misread or miss your comments. Let's see. Calliope. They're just reading glasses. That's all I need them for. Hopefully I'll get rid of them soon enough if I can get my eyes back in shape. Let's see. Scrolling down. Yes. No, can't find them, Calliope. I know exactly where they are. They are. Wait a minute. They might be. I said I know exactly where they are, and I thought to myself, yeah, they're in another room far away, but maybe they're in my pocket. Yeah, this is how my mind works. Scattered brain, to say the least. All right, let's see who else we got here and what else we got comments for once I can read better. George says a great run was Judgment War from X Factor Volume 1. Not sure. Let's see. X Factor Volume 1, Judgment War. I don't know what issue that would start at, but again, we just went through some of the X Factor. As I said, I don't remember Judgment War. Unfortunately, I don't have the wherewithal to search except for through Cover Browser right now, and they only search by number, not by run names. So let's see. Hondu. Is it Hondu? Honduran. Punisher by Ennis. Punisher. Well, Punisher, I honestly, I don't know. Mike Zeck really ruined Punisher for me in a certain way. I'll just put it this way. Because Mike Zeck is such an extraordinary artist, he ruined it in the following way. Insofar as I was always comparing everyone else's Punisher to Mike Zeck's Punisher, and it wasn't fair to anybody else. I'll put it that way. And again, Punisher, again, I was talking to Mike Barron on John's channel about briefly about his run on Punisher and the creation of Micro and all that kind of stuff. I think Mike did certainly define the character, but for Ennis's run, I apologize once again. I should have said this at the first. If you could try and include a year or possibly an issue number for some of these, it would be helpful for me to pull up covers, but again, I can just talk about them even if I can't pull up covers. Let's see. But I don't remember off the top of my head what Ennis's run was on the Punisher, but let me see here if I can pull it up. Give me 2 seconds. Apologize, I cannot speak and type at the same time. Again, Amish levels of technological support coming out of me. Let's see. I don't, again, there are so many Punisher. I will put some Punisher up in the background, but I don't recall what exactly the run is for Ennis. But again, there are so many Punisher runs, just runs of comics, that it's hard to keep track of them, to say the least. Some beautiful Punisher War Journal covers here. Oh yeah, there's a beautiful Punisher War Journal cover. Let's see. And unfortunately, some of these characters have just been memory hold, and you will never see them again. Well, maybe it is fortunate for Marvel that some of these will never be seen again, because at the very least it'll keep those characters from being destroyed. But again, various different Punisher, mostly Punisher War Journal here, but I'm not seeing off the top of my head Ennis's name on any of them because they're not listed on the covers, because I don't know off the top of my head. But we'll just put that up in the background for the moment. All right, let's take a look here, see what else we can find in the chat. Scrolling down. Let's see. Afro Motion Art says Mike W. Barr and Alan Davis run on the Outsiders. Whoa. There is something that I have not thought about for a long time. There, you are completely right. Outsiders, Alan Davis's run on the Outsiders. Let's see if I can pull that up. Alan Davis, in anything, is spectacular. But one of the things about Outsiders is, let's see, I can't remember if that run was in the main, because the main book, I don't even remember the main book of Outsiders. Let's see. Let's push this up a little bit. Full screen that. But The Outsiders is one of those books which eventually went into comic shop only format, which is Baxter paper. So I think Outsiders, as far as I remember, because I can remember buying them off of the comic rack at the newsstand, but at the same time, once they went into Baxter paper, but it seemed to me that they were only available in the comic store. But at the same time, if I remember correctly, there were other issues of DC Comics which did something similar, like the Legion of Superheroes and the what else was it? There was a couple of them that were sometimes reprinted on Baxter paper, and then they went to the high quality comic shops. Anyways, so here we at the very least have some Alan Davis covers on the Outsiders, Batman in the Outsiders. Let's see, scrolling down again. Beautiful art by Alan Davis there. Let's see. I quite honestly am more. See, this Batman and the Outsiders right here, number 5, which is George Perez. It is a crossover issue with the New Teen Titans. I can't remember what number though, but the fun thing is that if you place the cover of this Batman and the Outsiders next to the one from the New Teen Titans, which is the tie-in to this issue, you get a double spread cover because they're basically one large piece of art. So yeah, George Perez was my guy. I love George Perez art, but again, Alan Davis, you can never go wrong with Alan Davis. So, but I don't remember where his run ended on Batman, well, the Outsiders, because it transformed from Batman and the Outsiders to just the Outsiders. Okay, there we go with the looker. Let's see. See, this is the no, again, I think this was the stuff that was available on the newsstand, and then it went to the Outsiders, Adventures of the Outsiders, and it just became, yeah, we're getting into other stuff here. We're just getting into something completely different. There we go. But I'm not sure if we get into the Alan Davis stuff besides what I have scrolled past already. But there we go. There's your iconic Alan Davis Adventure of the Outsiders right there. Mike W. Barr, Alan Davis, Paul Neary. This is, again, these, thank you very much, actually. Who put that comment up? Afro Motion Art. Thank you very much for reminding me about these Batman and the Outsiders, because these are books that I don't have them all. This is something that I need to go and look for at the comic shop, quite honestly. So thank you very much for that. Let's see who else we got here. Vaz has a comment, says, decided to grab the current reprint of Crisis. I liked that series back then, but I didn't have a copy of it. Crises on Infinite Earth. Well, there's a couple of different Crises, but yes, if you're saying Crises to me, that means Crises on Infinite Earth. It was originally titled Crises. If you run across the original advertisements for Crises on Infinite Earth in the old DC comics, they just called it Crises. And then they switched the title. So if I remember correctly, I had several different working titles before they actually published it. But yeah, that was George Perez art, if I remember correctly, all the way through, and spectacular. That is, for my money, the best and the best crossover series of any in comic history, quite honestly, and it is the one that everybody, even Marvel with the Secret Wars, could not top. Let's see, scrolling down. Sound Engraver is here. How you doing, Sound Engraver? I always like to give a shout out to Sound Engraver. Click on her icon and go on over to Sound Engraver's channel and give her a follow. She does great work talking about culture in a same vein, but much different perspective than I do on her channel. Let's see. George, yes. Alan Davis also did the best run on Excalibur. Yes, indeed. Let's take a look at that. Let's see. Hopefully I'm not losing anybody with the fact that I have to search all these things up. Let's see. Let's see. Is it? I can't remember. No. It started. His run started in. I'm trying to remember. His run started in. Captain Britain, if I remember correctly, and then it moved on to Excalibur. Let's see. No, unfortunately, it's not going to bring them up right away. I apologize. Hey, there's Crisis on Infinite Earths, which we've just been talking about. They're just giving me these idiotic slab books. Let me back up a little bit here and see if I can get back to Excalibur itself. Nope. Unfortunately, it's not pulling up the. There's X-Men, there's Thor. There we go. No. But at the very least, here's some Alan Davis art in the background. But yes, I agree. I agree completely with George. This Alan Davis's run on Excalibur was, again, spectacular. Is not giving it enough credit. If you want a great run of comics, yes, go over, read Excalibur from, well, I would say issue 1, but there is actually a graphic novel, which, if I remember correctly, preceded issue 1 of Excalibur, um, and then they went, because of the success of that book, into issue number 1 of Excalibur itself, and you got a lot of good storylines. Which, again, Excalibur itself as a book, if anybody remembers, is an outcrop of the Fall of the Mutants, because you had Kitty Pryde injured, at the, like, she was severely injured in the Fall of the Mutants, and so I think was Nightcrawler. So both of them were on basically leave. They were trying to cure Kitty because, if I remember correctly, at the very first, no, it wasn't the very first of that book, but during the Excalibur run, anyways, during Alan Davis's Excalibur run, she got hurt to the extent that she became almost a ghost and she started to fade away. So they had to deal with that in the issue. So again, not just beautiful art, because Alan Davis is spectacular art, but also spectacular writing as well. We talked about this last week just on my comic book team up that I did with Nick Axe. We were talking about the uniqueness of Alan Davis when he got to actually write the stories for himself and then draw them. Melted Butters says, Master of Kung Fu. 1970s was a great run. Master of Kung Fu. I don't even know if that will come up here, but there was a Master of Kung Fu that was a magazine. I'm not sure if it was at the same time or successively with the Master of Kung Fu comic. Let's see. Let's see if we'll pull up anything with Master of Kung Fu. Here we go. Some beautiful Master of Kung Fu covers in the background. Starts at issue number 71. Hands of Shang-Chi. Is it Shang-Chi or Shang-Chi? I don't know. I always say Shang-Chi. That's the way I read it in my head. Let's see. Scrolling down through some of these spectacular Master of Kung Fu covers. Let's see if I can go to the one where I remember. No. Must be here somewhere. But again, yes, Master of Kung Fu is one of those 1970s Marvel comics that I don't know if you read it today, you would get all the references. Let's just put it that way. But again, we'll leave Master of Kung Fu up there in the background. Yes, great run of Marvel Comics. Master of Kung Fu, especially if you're into Kung Fu or martial arts of any kind. It was very much 70s style. Everybody is just learning about the Far East and martial arts and everything else, which was, very much a 1970s thing. It carried on into the 80s as well, just to let you know. And let's see. Scrolling down, Vaz says, Craven's Last Hunt. Yes, Craven's Last Hunt is a great comic run, if you ask me. I think, however, it does get its due within comic history, and everybody talks about it. It always gets reprinted, so that one is, I think, something that you can find readily available. Let's see. Scrolling down. See what else we got here. Oh, here's a comment which wasn't for me, but George says, no one drew Nightcrawler, Shadowcat, and Megan, Captain Britain, and Phoenix better than, obviously, Alan Davis. I would completely agree with that. Let's see. Afro says, Walter Simonson run on X Factor was great as well. Yes, indeed. Completely agree with that. Let's see. Scrolling down. Yes. Again, George says, really like that rematch between Phoenix and Galactus. He did. I talked about that one last week. Excuse me, when I was talking to Nick X. Excuse me for just 1 second. Excuse me. But yes, that again was a spectacular issue of Excalibur where Phoenix is fighting Rachel Summers. Phoenix is fighting Galactus. Beautiful double page spread with Galactus being staggered by the power of Phoenix, which is something in itself staggering to think about. So scrolling down. All right. Oh, I got a super chat. Thank you very much. I still don't know. We'll just call you the Lou guy 06. The Lou guy 06. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce LUGIA 06, or is it 06? See, that's where I get all messed up. But thank you very much for the $5 super chat. He says, "Hey RJ, just wanted to give a shout out for doing a great job with the videos, and your comics videos are very informative and thought provoking. Thanks." Well, thank you very much. Hopefully, if you ordered Valiant Heroes, you either got your copy already or it will be in the mail soon. We are still fulfilling some of the orders for the Valiant Heroes. But thank you very much for the super chat. Let's see. Melted Butter says Conan by Roy Thomas and John Buscema is classic. Yes. Again, it is hard to call what Roy Thomas and John Buscema did as a run on Conan, because they were on that book for years and years and years. To me, Conan for Marvel is Roy Thomas and John Buscema. When they left as a team from that book, it became something completely different. And again, stuff like the Haiku Trilogy, it was, again, different artists in a different take, and it was something that was unique, and to me, one of the greater runs on your Marvel Conan. But at the same time, it was the last of the great stories for that run, because when Roy Thomas and John Buscema, Big John, left Conan, it was all downhill from there, to say it was going to eventually be canceled, because they were the backbone of that book. So yeah. Let's see. Scrolling down. Pedro says, I read the comics where Thor wasn't a character but an image that someone, a human, used to get his might. Well, you might be talking about the run which was after the Walter Simonson run on Thor, because there was I can't even remember the name of the character. It was basically a construction worker that got the power of Thor because he could lift Thor's hammer. Perhaps you're talking about that, but I'm not entirely sure, Pedro. All right, scrolling down. Carol says, thoughts on X-Men 97. Am I the only one who hates it? Pacing nightmare, cheap nostalgia, cash in, woke nods, massive OP characters, cucked men, and worst of all, good guys behaving like bad guys. Thanks. X-Men 97. Again, I am such a visual person that I need to go look at the covers. This is why I'm on Cover Browser, by the way, because to me, you have to, I have to go look at the covers. Let's see. What volume of X-Men is my question. Let's see. Uncanny X-Men, I take it. 97. Let's see what before I go on, let's see what the earliest X-Men is I have. Let's see. Scrolling down. It's the Lotus, I think, was the issue of the earliest X-Men that I have. Not a great issue, to say the least. Probably why I got it for cheap. So there it is, number 24. That's the first X-Men I have. I just wanted to check that out. Scrolling down. Let's see. 97. We'll go. I got to go. 99. Again, scrolling down. Who do we have in X-Men 97? If they even have it here. Here we have 99, 98, 97. Is this the issue that you're talking about? My Brother, My Enemy. Maybe you're talking about a different volume of X-Men. I'm not entirely sure. And unfortunately, I will not get to your comment if you're correcting me in the comments for a while. So we'll just put that up in the background. Again, X-Men is something that gets its due. I would talk about it as great runs for X-Men, but everyone gives the X-Men their due. So I want to talk about some comics that don't get as much recognition as I think they should. Tony says, RJ, what are your thoughts on Sergeant Rock? Sergeant Rock is a unique comic in the fact that not everybody likes Sergeant Rock, and Sergeant Rock is not for everybody. However, I will say this. As I've mentioned many times on this channel, Sergeant Rock was one of those books that was always in our collection. most notably because I had older brothers, and I can never remember a time where there wasn't comics in my face in my house. But my older brothers, I think, got their first start in a comic collection because our uncle gave us comics. He was very much into Western and war comics. So GI Combat and Sergeant Rock were just staples of what he used to read. And again, you could just get issue here, issue there. There wasn't any real rhyme or reason to why or when he would buy the books that we could find out, and they're all battered and torn. But yes, I read Sergeant Rock from the time that I could first learn how to read. Love Sergeant Rock. And again, only, let me put it this way, I'm very much a superhero individual, so I could only take Sergeant Rock in very small chunks, but they were something very unique in comics for me as simply a superhero reader. And they certainly did influence me. I remember, what the heck was it? There was a contest, probably like grade 6 or something like that. It was like a Memorial Day contest, and we had to do poster art, and I did art, and I did it in the style of Sergeant Rock. And I remember I won like first place. For that, yeah, I got like $25 because it was like first place of the school. But anyways, yeah, inspiration to say the least, the Sergeant Rock was, and to make me really think about events that we always talked about in school, because every year we would do, the minute of silence and all that for especially World War II vets. And we would always get World War II vets coming in and talking to us. But in the movies and things like that, you got to see these high adventures and all these kinds of things, especially in the late 70s, early 80s for World War II. But when you read Sergeant Rock, now you got to see a very different take on the entire thing. And to me, it was much more of a human take. So that's my thoughts on Sergeant Rock. I could go on, but I'll stop there. Let's see. Scrolling down. George says, look at those high numbers, 200 plus today. You're lucky to get into the double digits. Yes, indeed. Vaz says, X-Men 97 was okay, adapting one comic run into a single episode. Oh, X-Men 97. I thought you were talking about issue number 97. Oh, obviously. You're talking about X-Men 97 at the cartoon. Let's see. I didn't watch any of the new stuff that's coming out. But even the old stuff, Pride of the X-Men was something I watched for the very first time. It was on television. I remember it being on television and watching it for the very first time, and then they replayed it, and I recorded it with my VCR. I probably still have that VHS tape somewhere. But to me, after that point, they kind of switched up the characters after the original, basically pilot episode of Pride of the X-Men. And to me, it was never quite as hyped as it could have been, because again, I'm reading John Byrne X-Men, and you want to give me cartoony versions of the X-Men. It was something to watch, but to me, it never lived up to the comic beauty for X-Men. That's my take on X-Men 97, the old version anyways. But thank you very much, Vaz, for clearing that up for me. Let's see. And he's talking about was okay. This is what Vaz says. X-Men 97 was okay, but adapting one comic run into a single episode was a bad move. I guess they didn't want to force people to watch them all to know the story. Yeah, again, that was one of the things about X-Men. In Marvel Comics in particular, they worked with continuity, and I think X-Men was the master of continuity after it was Chris Claremont that got a hold of that series, and he brought it into continuity with itself at the very least, and the mutant world. So yeah, trying to shove everything into trying to shove entire runs into one episode would not be would not be doing justice to the story. How's that? Let's see. Scrolling down. All right. Let's see. Michael says, Wally West is the Flash for me because of the Justice League cartoon from the early 2000s. Again, Wally West is the Flash for me because of Mike Barron's run on Flash from issue number 1. but I agree with you, Michael. Let's see. A lot of people are talking about X-Men 97 in the comments. Let's see. Scrolling down. Pedro says, my name is Barry Allen, and I am the fastest man alive, and no one ever takes that from me. Nah, Barry died. As far as I'm concerned, Barry died in the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Scrolling down. Da, da. George says, sorry, the only DC titles that I liked was Azrael, Volume 1 and Volume 2. I don't even remember. I bought Azrael, but I remember buying Azrael from the Batman comics, if I remember correctly. Who the heck did the art on that? The Azrael comics. I can't remember off the top of my head. Think I don't remember, but I think the artist, whoever it was, off the top of my head, it could have been John Caseta, but I'm not entirely sure. Whoever did the art for that did a unique style of it. I don't think anyone has done the character justice since then, nor with the fact that he has religious symbolism and all that kind of stuff. If you read anything written with Azrael in the last couple of years, and I've stopped reading newer comics almost completely, they kind of screwed the character over again. So, anyways, scrolling down. Let's see. Thanks for all the comic recommendations. You're welcome. That's what I'm hoping to do with this series, or part of what I want to do with this series is, again, this is make comics fun again. Let's talk about great comic runs so that you can have fun reading comics. So everybody puts in the comments every once in a while, what can I read? What do you suggest I read as great comics? And I thought, why don't I just talk about it for an hour? And hopefully we'll get this word out, because people watch. I do get a good number of watches on these live streams. We get about 400 to 500 eventually. But if you're looking for great comic runs, here's a great place to start with tonight. All right, scrolling down. Elijah says he read some of those X Factor. Yeah, I love those X Factor. Multiple runs of that X Factor was spectacular. Let's see. George says, yes, I love how he made Angel into Archangel. Loved how he made his blade into wings that can be thrown as blades with paralyzing toxins. The thing is about that whole character and that whole run, I was very sad to see Angel go, but again, they were having trouble actually justifying the existence of that character when they tried to make the characters into something more realistic. So that's, I think, why they changed them into Archangel. But at the same time, again, it was a spectacular way to work with that character. Just for me, I always thought it was slightly a ripoff of Longshot and his throwing knives, just visually anyways. However, that didn't take away from my enjoyment of the character, to say the least. Let's see. Scrolling down. Greg says, what does Greg say? I made a lot of jokes about the rule of cool. Everything has a reason, and reasons have everything. Are you going to drive the nail home that all flash and no bang gives you a headache? All flash, only if it's Wally West Flash. There you go, Greg. Elijah also says, RJ, I remember the talking ship. It took them to a world of human looking and bestial factions. A celestial arrived. Yeah. Oh, I can't remember the name of that. Oh, the name of the ship. They just called them a ship for the longest time. Where in the world? I don't remember. Basically, I think it was, if I remember correctly, the ship of Apocalypse, and they took it over, and then they freed the mind of the living artificial intelligence that controlled the ship. But the ship itself, Apocalypse didn't create. It was a celestial ship, if I remember correctly. After the Walter Simonson run, that begins the story arc of where they get rid of the ship entirely. But yes, I do remember that as well. It was very interesting, especially if you think about it in today's terms with all these people. It was a very interesting run where, if I remember correctly, X Factor was taken to this world where everybody was basically a mutant. And They were genetically engineered. I think if I one of the lines that stuck out in my mind even to this day is the fact that one of the characters who was trying to take over, I don't know if it was the world or just one of the power positions in this world, but everybody would talk bad about him because they thought he should have never been born because they were relaxing their qualifications for the genetically engineered human beings, and he had a birthmark. He said, if I remember correctly, part of the storyline was that if he had been born 50 years early, that birthmark would have made sure that they would have culled him before he was even born, because it was such an anomaly on his body, and they're about genetic engineered perfection. Now imagine writing that storyline in 2024. Do you think you could get away with that storyline? I'm not entirely sure. Certainly not at Marvel these days. People would be up in arms, to say the least. But honestly, I thought it was a brilliant way of trying to describe these people and their world. Let's see. Vaz says, I started getting X-Men starting with Inferno. I remember, Inferno was such a big deal at the comic store that there were posters. But at the same time, again, these are things that you will never, ever see today. I don't think. I don't know. Perhaps if you frequent a comic store as much as I did back in the 80s, you might know the answer to this. But there were leaflets handed out by the comic store about, well, there was art on the front, and it was mostly Walter Simonson art. But on the back, it gave you a list of a checkbox list of all of the tie-ins for Inferno. But it was 4 pages long. And you could only get 1 page at a time. And if you could collect all 4 of these handout pages, you could actually have basically a small poster that you could put on your wall that was made up of these 4 leaflets, which basically all it just said was Inferno in the background in burning letters, and then you had headshots by Walter Simonson of different sections of characters and each of these leaflet handouts. Now, again, I don't know. Do you think you will ever see anything like that from Marvel ever again? I don't. I remember taking all those and putting them together above my door because the room I grew up in, anyways, my room was just plastered over everywhere with comic posters and comic art and everything else. There was barely an inch of space left on any of the walls, and that was the one that went right above the door because it fit perfectly in there. But anyways, yes, loved Inferno. Let's see, scrolling down. Although I've been talking for an hour, so let's see if we can get through some more of this chat with a little bit of speed. Tony says, RJ, who is the better character, Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon? I would have to say Buck Rogers, quite honestly, although that's just because I grew up on Buck Rogers. You know, I just watched Buck Rogers as a kid, so that's the only reason I would say that. So I don't know. Flash Gordon, I remember the 80s movie for Flash Gordon, and I've watched some of the serials for Flash Gordon, all that kind of stuff, and read some of the older comics. But again, Buck Rogers is something I grew up on. So Buck Rogers. Scrolling down. Pedro says Jean Grey from the Hellfire Club, right? Good times. Oh yeah, I forgot about Jean Grey and the Hellfire Club. She was something completely different. Uh, let's say if you're looking for John Byrne, well, spectacular female John Byrne art, go look up Jean Grey as the Black Queen by John Byrne. Scrolling down. George, finally get to George's comment that says, Judgment War story arc also proves that Iceman is not gay. The Iceman miniseries from the 80s also proves that. You can read his thoughts, and it's all about him falling in love with this woman who betrays him. But anyways, scrolling down. Vaz says, Flash Gordon, he has better theme song. I don't know. The question was always with Buck Rogers, why does the future look so much like the 70s? But hey, I guess it's because history repeats itself, right? Scrolling down. Calliope says, I started reading comics at X-Men number 162, the Brood storyline. Yes. Brood storyline for X-Men. I think, there's several different Brood storylines. Let's go 162, 162, 162. Let's see which, we'll skip ahead here. I think 162. I see. I don't remember who was doing the art for the interiors of these at the time, but there were several really good Brood storylines for X-Men. See, this is Paul Smith here. I do know that's Paul Smith, but let's see. There's a spectacular cover again. This is one of the covers I drew as a kid, redrew as a kid. This one on the left hand side, which is Kitty Pryde, done by Paul Smith. If I do remember correctly, it's Paul Smith. Let's see if I can zoom in and see. I can't really read, but yeah, as far as I remember, it's Paul Smith. That was, I think, because it was part of the Brood storyline as well. There was something in the mansion. I think it was one of the Brood. But anyways, yeah, Brood storylines were always great within X-Men within the 80s. It was basically a ripoff of Aliens, but at the same time they did it justice when they took it into the X-Men mythos. All right, scrolling down. George says, my first comic was Transformers Headmasters number 1. Oh, okay. I think I remember that run. It was a mini series, if I remember correctly. I do have some of them, but yes. Transformers was one of those books which, again, I could never fully get into. It's kind of like the G.I. Joe. I would buy it every once in a while, but I don't know. The cover art always teased something much better than the story that usually got within the pages, I found. Anyways, let's see. Scrolling down. Herp Derp says, is that where Iceman first fights a cyborg ninja without using his powers in order to rescue his hot Japanese girlfriend? That is one of, let's see, that's one of the, I don't have that screen pull up anymore. That's one of, I think it's Jim Lee. Jim Lee does X Factor. Is it X Factor? No, it was X-Men. You're correct, because it was when the X-Men book was split into two at that time, because there was X-Men and Uncanny X-Men, if I remember correctly. That was one of the storylines, and I think it was Jim Lee art, but yeah. Actually, the funny thing is that when Renzo and I started doing Thomas Valiant number 2, which we're working on right now, I went back to that issue where Iceman fights cyborg ninjas, and I used that as part of my inspiration to say, okay, Renzo, we're going to have some cyborg ninjas. Here's some examples of cyborg ninjas. And then Renzo, he took it in his own direction. But yes, that was the inspiration of some of the cyborg ninjas that you'll see within Thomas Valiant number 2. All right, scrolling down. I got to get through some of these comments. Tony says, a couple of great runs. Chris Claremont's 18-year-long original X-Men run and Robert Kanigher's pre-crisis Sergeant Rock. All right, scrolling down. I apologize. I might have to cut this stream a little bit short because my eyes are starting to bug out of my head, because I've been on a stream with John before this. So I'll see if I can get through the chat before I have to quit. So George says, the 80s and 90s artists knew how to draw women back then. They did indeed. All right, scrolling down. Afro says, issue 22 and through 32 of Batman and the Outsiders. Very good. Thank you very much for clearing that up. I will have to look through my collection to see how many of those I have. Herp Derp says, speaking of Alan Davis, he drew some of those most beautiful women comics had ever seen during his Excalibur run. Quite honestly, I don't think anyone has ever drawn Kitty Pryde as beautiful as Alan Davis did, quite honestly. And I'm saying that as somebody, when I was growing up, Kitty Pryde was probably about 5 or 6 years older than me. So yeah, seeing Alan Davis draw Kitty Pryde was a joy to behold in Excalibur when I was a kid. Let's put it that way. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Ryan is here, and Ryan says, "Hello, RJ. What superhero has the most complete, most entertaining, and most inspiring and most cohesive narrative? This would include best villains, best world building, best supporting characters, etc." Okay, what superhero? All right. Well, I'll have to limit my answer to what superhero from Marvel and DC, because we're talking about something that must have a fairly large mythos if it's going to include all of those things. So to say a superhero that has the most complete, most entertaining, most inspiring, and most cohesive narrative. This would include best villains, best world building, best supporting character. If you're going to have all of those qualifications, I got to say Superman. Quite honestly, I got to say Superman. You might say that it's not as cohesive as you might think, but I would go back to one version of Superman, and that would be the version of Superman that was created and done by John Byrne when Crises was over. That's, again, the version of Superman that was the first continuity Superman, because everything else pre-Crisis didn't really have continuity. If it did, it wasn't supposed to be there, according to DC and their editorial staff. So says Jim Shooter, anyways. But yeah, for my money, if you have all those qualifications, Superman it is. Let's see, scrolling down, scrolling down. Afro says, no problem. You're doing a great job with your channel. Thanks for sharing. Thank you very much, Afro. Let's see. Scrolling down, scrolling down. See if I can get here. Vaz says, Carl Banks was good. Dan Russa, the best though. Sad that he doesn't make comics anymore. Sad that a lot of greats don't make comics anymore. Herp Derp says, Bagley always has been a machine. I remember seeing a comic convention segment from some TV show in the 90s, and it featured a young Bagley showing his samples to Marvel and getting hired on the spot. Oh, very good. Hopefully, Sound Engraver is not thanking me for actually the first comment I made, because if that is the case, I am so far behind in this chat that it is not even funny. Sound Engraver says, thank you, RJ. Unable to give a super chat. I have an update info for the GOG hegemony. I'm not entirely sure what that is off the top of my head, but no problem. Super chats are always just a bonus, Sound Engraver. Thank you very much for showing up. Let's see. I'll try to get through some of these comments with a little bit more speed. Tony says the Alan Moore and Alan Davis Captain Britain run was great. I'll have to agree but disagree in the fact that it was spectacular for my money because of Alan Davis. Alan Moore, I never liked Alan Moore as a storyteller, quite honestly, just never. Because I remember when Excalibur first came out, since at that time, the only way you could read Captain Britain was to get the original magazines. And then a couple of years later, they reprinted them for the first time. And I guess for the longest time was the only time with Marvel. And it was a large, basically graphic novel, and it was colored. And I remember reading the entire run, which was the Alan Moore and Alan Davis Captain Britain. And to me, I did not like it as much as the Excalibur stuff written by Chris Claremont and then by Alan Davis. I think both of those writers did a much better job with those characters than Alan Moore, in my opinion. Anyways, scrolling down. George says, that's right, RJ. Shadowcat was stuck intangible. Holy Moses, I think I must be way far behind in this chat. All right, scrolling down. Vaz says, Master of Kung Fu was published in black and white in French by Heritage. I had a bunch of those. Really? Did not know that. Let's see. Scrolling down. Herp Derp says, there was a great X-Men versus Fantastic Four limited series with beautiful John Bogdanove art that predates Excalibur directly. You sure? I thought the art in that was John Buscema. I know exactly what you're talking about. It was 4 issues. Um, Actually, there was 2 miniseries that came out exactly at the same time. There was Mephisto Versus, and then there was what else was it? X-Men and Fantastic Four. It might have been at the exact same time. But anyways, maybe I'm getting the 2 of those confused. But yes, I do remember that miniseries. That is one of the things I was going to say at the top of what I was talking about here. I want to just cover here mainly. Anyways, maybe we'll get into miniseries at some point, but I want to talk about main series, runs on the main series instead of small series themselves. Scrolling down. Strictly Jake says, no, Slake Jake says, I sense someone on YouTube was talking about Alan Davis, Captain Britain, and Excalibur, and I had to join in. Wonderful, perfect comics. Additionally, how about John Byrne's run in Alpha Flight? Yes. Again, there's one book I bought from issue number 1, John Byrne's Alpha Flight. I will get it. If we do this series anymore, yes, I will get into that Alpha Flight to talk about that. Indeed. Let's see. Jake also says, that X-Men versus Fantastic Four miniseries is what I cut my teeth on, and it's still one of my favorite stories of all time. That was one of the very first, if I remember correctly, Marvel comics that was printed on Baxter paper as well. So I remember that miniseries fondly. But again, I think I might be confusing the Mephisto versus with that as well, which for my money, if you were ever to ask me to reboot all of Marvel so that we get rid of all of the nonsense that you see today, I would go back to probably 1996, but the storyline would go back to that Mephisto versus, because it was Mephisto versus Fantastic Four versus Avengers versus X-Men. So there was different verses that teams that he battled. But anyways, it starts off with Mephisto being basically afraid of Franklin Richards. And for my money, I would go back to that origin point right there, and that's where I would draw the story to fix the entire Marvel continuity, to get rid of all the nonsense we see about us today. I would say my storyline in my head goes: Mephisto kidnaps basically Franklin Richards, and then Franklin Richards and also kidnaps at the same time, in a roundabout way. I won't get into the entire thing. The female child of Peter Parker and Mary Jane, and the 2 of them basically meet up in the limbo realm of Mephisto, and they try to save the world by creating a evil version of what actually exists within the Marvel universe, and that becomes the Marvel that you know today. That would be how I would fix it. And basically, the entire thing would snap back to actual heroic heroes by their being by these 2 characters who had grown up in this limbo realm, which would be Franklin Richards and Miss Parker, and basically their boyfriend and girlfriend, and they want to get out so that they can get married and have a life together. So they recreate the entire world through the power of Franklin Richards. Basically, I'm going on too far about this, but anyways, the evil world is a world controlled by Mephisto. That's how I see it in my mind. The current world of Marvel is the evil world of Marvel, which is controlled by Mephisto. Anyways, scrolling down. Gene Cohen's run on Detective Comics was great. Gene Colan. Afro says, yes, I didn't get too far into mini DC, but that's one of the things I always loved. I just put a post up on X there, I think earlier in the week, basically saying that it was talking about early X-Men, or not early Batman, and how some of those runs are just not appreciated enough. Let's see, scrolling down. Scrolling down. Yeah, I am way behind in this chat, but that might be a good thing. It means people are being engaged. Scrolling down. Um, Elijah says, RJ, I feel like Hulk cover didn't get enough love. I feel like I'm not sure which Hulk cover that you mean, but basically, if you want to talk great runs for Hulk, I will in the future. The Hulk storyline where he gets basically stuck in another world, which is a reflection of what is in his head. That was one of the great runs for one of the understated great runs of the Incredible Hulk. But I won't get into that today. Again, trying to get through the comments. I should put that on my list to talk about later. Scrolling down. Jake says, seriously overlooked, underrated comic series from the last 20 years, Image Comics Noble Cause by Jay Farber. I don't know that series at all. Quite honestly, I stopped buying Image comics basically about 3-4 years after Image came out. I bought every comic that Image put out in those 3-4 years, but then I really didn't follow Image comics after that. But I should take a look and see what I'm missing. Thank you very much, Jake. Oh yeah, Vaz here has a great comment. Legion of Superheroes, The Great Darkness run was nice. I did early on my channel. I think it was no, not early in my channel. Probably 2022. I have a video about The Great Darkness. I just started doing comic run videos just to see if anybody would want to listen to them. And yeah, I did The Great Darkness. It is again, yes, one of the great Legion of Superhero stories, to say the least. Vaz also says, I'm still angry how Bendis completely destroyed Legion of Superheroes. Right with you there, Vaz. Right with you. Scrolling down. Vaz also says, he made me stop buying Superman too. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Scrolling down. Another super chat. That's $10 for. You're going to spoil me here. Thank you very much. What is a good run to read on Star Trek? I remember you said Star Trek did not translate well on the comics. I'm not sure that's exactly what I meant by saying it didn't translate well. I don't think it well when I was reading it in the 70s and the 80s. If you go back and read them, anyways, for me, I don't know how to put this, but for me, going back and reading those early Star Trek runs from Gold Key, when I read them now, if I go back and read them, I can hear the sound effects in my head when you're in certain parts of the Enterprise. And since those Gold Key comics were structured in a way where they were chapter based, there was a chapter almost every couple of pages. It was mimicking the style of the show itself, where there would be commercials. And somebody, I don't know who, but somebody came up with a masterful idea of putting those chapter breaks in at a certain pace, so that again, not only the sound effects, but the music comes up when in my head. It comes up when I get to the end of one of those chapter breaks. So I say that it translates in my mind very much better now than it ever did when I was a kid. It never did as a kid. But you know, that was because I was just used to watching Star Trek on the screen, and it seemed like a step down to me. Scrolling down. George says, prior to the X-Men, Wolverine with an Aussie accent, though Colossus versus Juggernaut fight was nice. Yes, indeed. Indeed it was. That was, what was it? I can't remember. There is a line in the Pride from the X-Men that always sticks in my head. There's a couple of lines that always stick in my head, but it's the Blob. The one of the lines that sticks in my head is, "Oh, no one will move the Blob," something like that. But yeah, the Blob and that always stuck out in my head since I watched it the first time. Scrolling down. See if I can get through some of these comments. I think George here is also talking about the Azrael comics. He says Crusader for Volume 1. Unfortunately, he should have stuck to just doing art, if you ask me, instead of destroying Marvel Comics. Let's see. Scrolling down. Some cross chat here in the chat. I'm just trying to get through it. If you'll bear with me for a moment. Scrolling down. My apologies. My mic is doing weird things. So if you can't hear me correctly, please let me know in the chat. Hopefully, I will get to that part of the chat soon enough. But I think that it's working better now. But I apologize for that brief moment of silence. Let's see. Scrolling down. Again. I just had a very sharp jump in my chat, but let's see. Scrolling down, a lot of cross chat again. A lot of people talking about what I was talking about. Paul Smith's X-Men, Uncanny X-Men with Kitty Pryde in the background. Still, great cover. Honestly, I think it's one of the great covers from comic history. Let's see. Herp Derp says Kitty was being stalked by a Sidrian hunter in the book with that famous Paul Smith cover. I don't remember that part of it at all. I do remember her and how she got away from it, but I don't remember too much about the bad guy in that issue itself. Let's see. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Let's see. George says, Willis, I can never say his name correctly. I always just, to my mind, you know how your mind connects the first of the word and the end of the word, and you just fill in the blanks? It always sounds like Portico to me. Let's see. Oh, yes, he's the one who did thank you very much, George. He's the one who did the X-Men series with Opal and Bobby and the, what is it? The Ninja Cyborgs. Yes, thank you very much, George. Scrolling down. Let's see. Robert is here. How you doing, Robert? Let's see. He says he's late, but better late than never, Robert. Certainly. Glad to see you here. George also says the only thing good about Alan Moore run on Captain Britain was Alan Davis art. Well, I don't know if you're mimicking what I said, but or you're quoting what I said. I should rephrase, but yeah, that's exactly what I think. Let's see. Not to say that Alan Moore doesn't come up with interesting ideas. I just don't like where he goes with them. Scrolling down. Let's not forget John Byrne's run on Namor before Jay Lee took over. To me, that was a very interesting book. It was one that I bought, and it was very well done, but I don't know. Maybe it was it John Byrne doing the inking there as well? Because I don't recall. It seemed to me that he was developing a different style than he had ever put in anything else when he got into Namor, and it just didn't pop for me the way it would within, let's say, X-Men, Fantastic Four, Alpha Flight, anything else he had done previous to that. Although, I'm not kicking John Byrne out the door because it's not his greatest piece of art. John Byrne is spectacular no matter where you find him. Scrolling down. I do believe I'm getting to the end of the chat. Well, I've only been talking for an hour and a half. Let's see. Scrolling down. All right. I think I've gotten to the end of the chat. I want to thank everybody for showing up. We still got 35 people in the chat. Holy Moses. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for showing up. And for listening to me ramble, as I usually do, about some great comic runs. I apologize to anybody if I missed your comments, but again, I've been talking on streams for the last 2.5 hours, so I think it's time for me to get up out of this chair. So I will see everyone again next week. We will have a comic book team up with John's Longbox here next week. I have a couple of people that are looking to come on, so not entirely sure who it's going to be just yet. I have some interesting guests in the works, and we will get to those in Comic Book Team Up next week. And we will be doing our next comic, Make Comics Great Again, in 2 weeks from now. And I appreciate, as I said, everyone for showing up. And in case anyone had missed it at the first, just to let everybody know, there are 2 links in the description for my 3 graphic novels, Thomas Valiant, The Valiant Heroes, and Crom the Destroyer. And I'm going to leave you, as usual, with the short 45-second trailer for Crom the Destroyer as an outro. And I will see you all later. Thank you very much. Oh, wait a minute. 2 seconds here. I'll have to take George's comment off so that you can see better. And I'll say goodnight.
No matter how many wars you fight, no matter how much blood you shed, no matter how much rage you loose, no matter how many demons you face, no matter how many companions you lose, no matter if our kingdom falls, I know that you will return to me in honor.